So I'm gonna walk this episode through in a few different steps. I wanna first start off with Chief Swag. I think some of the business that I've experienced through Chief Swag may be really helpful and insightful for those of you wanting to start companies. Period of months of just absolute weakness and depression, anxiety, really not knowing what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, going through a really traumatic breakup. Hi everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Dare to be Fearless. My name is Alexa Curtis. If you are not familiar with me, I am a former Disney host and serial entrepreneur. I am now the founder of a company called Chief Swag Officer. We make all of the custom mics and podcast covers for talent, executives, business owners, celebrities, shows around the world. So before I get into this episode, make sure you're following Dare to be Fearless on social media at Dare2Be Fearless, along with my personal social media, Alexa_Curtis. If you are keen to get a taste of Chief Swag, you can use the code ChiefSwag10 and get a 10% discount on your first order at ChiefSwagOfficer.com. So this episode, I really wanted to focus on creating and crafting your own job role. Someone actually tweeted me this the other day, and they said they had seen me talk about this particular topic on, I think, a Twitter thread that I did, and it really got me thinking that there are so many ways I think that people don't think about business, and I feel like with everything that I put out there, I want to get you to a point where what everyone else is doing, you're really doing the opposite so that you can either land your dream job, pursue the crazy world of entrepreneurship like I have, or whatever else you decide to do. I'm also recording this from my laptop so that I can have the proper audio for the podcast episode. So that's kind of what's going on in the corner here. So I'm going to walk this episode through in a few different steps. I want to first start off with Chief Swag. I think some of the business that I've experienced through Chief Swag may be really helpful and insightful for those of you wanting to start companies. And then I want to get into more of like the sales and cold calling part of entrepreneurship. But if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I have been in the industry, the media world, since I was about 12. That's the year that I started this fashion blog. I started it because I had no money, no connections, and I really just wanted to make a name for myself. I wanted to do something that was cool and different with my life. And the fashion blog spiraled into a LinkedIn page, which spiraled into getting partnerships with brands who hired me to do their social media, which ended up landing me a social media kind of copywriting gig for a woman named Brittany in New York. And then I got into the world of TV, started doing a bunch of different TV segments where I would work with different brands to partner with them. They would pay me to go on TV. At the time, I didn't know that this was like quite illegal, but they would pay me to go on TV and talk about their products. I would then pitch the segment. So while people at the age of 17, 18, and 19 were like graduating high school and going on to college, I was busting my ass trying to make money, make my career into something. And it was very difficult. And then I cold emailed and landed a show on Radio Disney. It was really just a one-off email that essentially said who I was, that I had come from this background, that I had a bunch of experience in TV, and that I was interested in setting a meeting with Disney. And someone replied, and I flew to LA, and over the course of about 8 months, got this particular show called Fearless Every Day. And then I left Disney and I moved to Austin, Texas, and I did a different startup there, and that it went south to say the least. And then fast forward, I ended up relocating to London in October of 2023, which was the best decision of my life. It was definitely an adjustment period. I have dual citizenship because my mom is British, so for me it's super easy to go back and forth. I came here during a period of months of just absolute weakness and depression, anxiety, really not knowing what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, going through a really traumatic breakup, and London was the way that I really feel like I refound myself. Then earlier this year, I had this idea, and that's how Chief Swag started. I started making these foam products in my living room because I wanted to find the particular product, and then I launched an Etsy shop in August with no expectation, this weird gut intuition that there was something behind this idea. But I really had no expectation. Like anything that I've done in business, I really like to have no expectation around. And I find a lot of people have expectations. You think, I put a bunch of time into this, I put a bunch of effort into this content or this video, and then no one views it. I have gotten to a point where I literally remove myself from the picture, if that makes sense. Like if I post a video and 5 people view it, I don't track the numbers. I just don't anymore. I would be lying if I said that I did, because I honestly have so much anxiety knowing how much effort and work I put into things, and to allow myself to feel frustrated by the fact that 5 or 10 people see something. The only way to really battle it is to just keep going. You just have to keep going forward, because if you give in to that bullshit and that negativity, then you really succumb to the world and the game of business and you won't win. And so I launched the Etsy shop. Chief Swag has been doing really well. It's my first venture into e-commerce. And the first hire that I made was I hired a head of business about a month into it. And strange enough, I met someone at London Tech Week because I do a lot of speaking engagements. And his cousin was just a consultant, but used to be the CEO of like Sunglasses Hut, Luxottica in the UK. So we had a few phone calls, you know, that intro call where you're like, what do you do? Like, how can we work together? Do you know anyone? I had just moved here. So I was like, look, if you know anyone I can consult for. My plan over the summer was to like go 100% into consulting. I was going to do it actually with Eleanor, who I had on my podcast, who was a former LinkedIn executive. We had some meetings. I was excited about it, but I was also really hesitant because over the years when I've done consulting gigs, you sometimes become a slave to the other person. And I was well aware that I was going down that trajectory again, but unfortunately, it is near impossible to make a full-time living off of influencing and content creation if you do not have hundreds of thousands of followers. And so 50% of me, after doing this for years, just came to the point where I did not want to keep fighting for this platform that I have. I've built it, I've done it, like I'm okay if this is how it goes, but I also need to exist, I need to live, I need to make money. But I always knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to build something like an actual business. Being an influencer or a personal brand, it is a business, it is a type of business. However, it is not the same kind of business that is like a CPG company, a consumer packaged good company, or a food product, or like some form of technology. It's just completely different. And so I always was very fascinated by business and always wanted to start something. And so that's why starting Chief Swag to me is not surprising at all, because it always seemed like along the years that's what I would do. But anyway, so I was really planning to go back to consulting, and then I, had this idea and I started it, and now I've just been rolling with it. And so I met this guy and he introduced me to his cousin, and we had that intro call, blah, blah. And then like a next month we had one scheduled, and I was in New York and I actually was on the brink of canceling it. I was like, I don't need this phone call. This guy is great. Awesome guy. He's like 65, but he can't do anything for me. He doesn't work at Sunglasses Hut anymore. But I ended up, for whatever reason, which is rare, because I'll be honest, if I feel like I don't need to be on a call, especially right now, I just cancel it. I just don't have the time in the day or really the mental capacity to be on a phone call with someone. That's a waste of time. But for whatever reason, I didn't cancel the call, and I end up getting on the call with him, and he's like, has anything basically changed in the last month? And I'm like, change? No, but like I've got this idea and I'm working on it, and it's an e-commerce. And I came to find out that Richard has helped scale multi-million-dollar e-commerce businesses, that's what he really does all day. And essentially I ended up hiring him, and he was my first hire for Chief Swag. And I've never really hired anyone besides like a freelancer in the past. I knew, I think very quickly on, after being in business for 10 years, after going through so much trial, so much error, that the only way I was going to scale this was to almost outsource what I'm not good at and then learn along the way. And the e-commerce business, the side of dealing with customers, customer service, with sourcing the product, all of that is not my world. I mean, my world is really media, is marketing, is being on camera. So I knew that, okay, I've got this idea and there's something here because, we're making a mass a massive amount of money within this amount of time that it started. But I just knew in comparison to other things that I've done, if I do this on my own, I won't be able to do this because I don't have the answers. And I think that sometimes when you're starting a business, number one, being okay, not knowing that you have all the answers is ideal. I really struggle when I meet someone who's like, I know everything and I'm the smartest person in the room. I want to be the stupidest person in the room. I want to know absolutely nothing, because the more that I can get from someone else is the more that I learn and the more that I can really grasp onto. And I just love that. And so I hired him, and within 4 months now of starting this company, I mean, we have gotten so much done. I have been approached by people who are interested in investing. At this point, I'm not interested in taking anyone's money unless it came at a no equity type of incentive, which is very hard to find. And I say that just because I went through a really traumatic situation with someone else, and, being in business with someone and having someone else give you something in return for something, to me right now, I just want to build this with a team for, I think, a year or maybe at least like 8 or 9 months. The people who have approached me interested in investing, it would be great. Like, I could do a lot right now if someone gave me $50,000 or $60,000. But I've decided to take this crazy wild risk and invest my money into it, the money that I have in savings, and really go from there. And I feel like that's what defines an entrepreneur in comparison to someone who is not, is what are the risks you're willing to take and how much are you willing to risk. Simultaneously, I've had to have some really intense meetings with my therapist because I grew up with a very scarcity mindset. I grew up with like a very middle class family, really hold on to all of your money. So for me to be basically putting everything on the line, like if I run out of money and I run out of money, like that's it. I've had to really overcome or work to overcome those feelings because I believe so much in this idea. And so if you really are starting something, you really have to be willing to risk it all. I just think that's the only way to do it. You cannot half-ass it. And even hiring Richard, I mean, it's a significant amount of money at the beginning of a startup for me to be investing, but just my gut intuition, the same that it was about Move to London, the same that it was about building Chief Swag, it's on the head with him. And so something that is a bit strange is operating a business in the UK, but then also with the US. I've talked to some accountants and they have all said to basically maintain it in the US in terms of like banking, so I don't have to pay double taxes. That part is very stressful. Like, I don't have all of the answers when it comes to running a business, especially not one that's worldwide and having to deal with like the accounting. I'm just truly doing the best that I can with my own bookkeeping. I think at some point here I will hire an accountant and like properly establish it in both the US and the UK, but right now I think under like a certain amount of money you can kind of get away with not paying taxes in both and like running it from one, and that's just what I've decided to do because realistically otherwise like you're fucked. I literally have no even idea what to do about that. So the accountant basically said like, you're good just for now, but let's just be cautious about this in the future. And so that's been interesting to deal with. And I would say the other part about running an e-commerce business, I'd say the customer service is it's been challenging for me because you get people writing in saying like, we want a refund, we don't like this, and you're like, okay, but nothing's wrong with the product. Well, we didn't like how the font came out on this side. And I use another company as a really good example. I had a order that I placed for my favorite kind of supplement company. Is called Bubs Naturals, and when I was in the US I always order it in bulk. Long story short, my order didn't come. I was kind of like, what the fuck? Like, I bought this order, I need this, I'm about to fly back to the US. The marketing person, and I mean, this was no paid partnership, this was nothing. He called me and he was like, hey, like, we're gonna refund your order, we're gonna send you double, like, just tell me what you want. And I said, I'm really curious, I just started an e-commerce business. Can you explain to me why you're doing this? Like, I'm fine to pay, I just need the order. And he said, it's better for us to lose the money than have you write a bad review. And that to me really stood out because that company is definitely further ahead than Chief Swag is. But to hear them on the side of the line and say like, we would rather just lose this money than have you write something bad, it really stuck with me. And so when you're a founder and you're starting a business, you have to be aware that you're, in a sense, you're babysitting your team. You're babysitting sometimes the customer. And then you're still expected to make money and build the business. And it's hard. I come from, if you've watched any of my content, like a very aggressive personality in business. I like to just go for it. I like to ask people questions. And the customer service side is not the same. I cannot reply to someone and be like, why are you rejecting this? Like, tell me exactly why. It's just, it's just not how it works. Like, even the other day, someone wrote in, this was actually so, like, kind of cute to me. Someone wrote in a photo of our foam and a measuring tape next to it that the logo was slightly, like, tilted. And all of our customers have been amazing. Like, 99% of them have been amazing. And this person wrote in with a photo of the measuring tape, like, our logo is tilted, like, what can we do about it? And I had to reach out, I messaged Richard and I say, what do I say back to this? And he wrote me a really nice email, and you basically say back, like, we are printing onto an object that is not flat, that has no consistency. Like, expecting perfect results is just not possible. And so I've had to grapple with, like, knowing when to give someone their money back, knowing when to give someone half a refund back, and knowing when to just say, we're not giving you any money back, because sometimes people just complain, and that's just how it goes. So that part's been really interesting. The next phase for me here is really figuring out the product side. We have distributors. We basically get the product in the foam from China, and then we have different printers, but it's a very niche form of work. It's been complicated, to say the least. Surround ourselves with good partners and get our packages looking amazing. And with the holiday season coming up, that's something that I'm really focused on. But as I've gotten further into business, I've become just so much, I think, more chill and, like, kinder to myself. I've seen so much. So now when it feels like everything is blowing up, I kind of just think, like, I have been through this, or for the most part, so much worse. Like, I got through that, I'll get through this. And I think just checking yourself is very important, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in the, like, oh my God, what's going on? I'm freaking out. This isn't working. It doesn't help. Freaking out just does not help. The best thing to do when something is going wrong in business is just take a step. Take a step back. Don't call anyone. Don't contact anyone. People will say go on a walk, have a bar of chocolate, whatever it is. And just realize, like, I like to repeat to myself now every single morning, I've been through this before, I can get through it. I've been through this before, I can get through it. And I'm telling you that it's very helpful. So that's where Chief Swag is now. So that's just a little update, a little kind of long probably update on that. But now I wanted to get into more of some of, like, the business and sales tactics that I'm realizing, especially with conversations that I've had during networking. One common theme that I want to address is, what do you say to someone when they ask you what you're doing and you either don't know what you're doing or you're not doing anything? The best sentence I think someone can say back to when someone asks you that is, I'm currently exploring roles and taking some time to decide what I want to do next. My best friend in London was laid off by a company, got a massive settlement, and she has done exceptionally well. I mean, she's 32. She's probably worth close to $1 million, which is wild. I mean, she worked at a corporation for like 9 years and then had this crazy thing happen, had invested her money really well. I mean, she's like kind of the opposite of me in that way. She's taken that traditional route, very smart, college, like sales, all of that. And I'm just like off the rails, like entrepreneurship, it's fun. Now she actually wants to be an entrepreneur, which I think is great because she has done it again in an opposite way. Like, she worked corporate for years. She has a bunch of money. She can take the risks that, for me, I have to be a bit more calculated because I don't have endless cash flow, right? Unless I raise money. Like, everything I put into this business is the same money that I used to pay my rent is the same money that I use to fund my business. And that's scary. She has so much freedom right now, but she's been really struggling because she doesn't know what she wants to do next. I think it was a huge blow for her to be let go of this massive corporation that she thought she was going to be at for forever. And now she all of a sudden wakes up every day and she doesn't know what to do. And she's had a lot of people, including her partner, say to her, well, what are you doing? What are you going to know? When are you going to know? And I have just had to really sit her down a few times and say, like, look, you don't need to know. There are going to be times in your life when you just don't need to know. When I went through what I went through with the marathon incident in April, I mean, there was about 3 months there, 4 months to be honest. And at the time I had a business coach and I was talking to her, and everyone I kind of started with on the phone, I was like, look, please just don't ask me what I'm going to do next. I have no idea. And I'm okay right now because I am just essentially healing from what's happened, but I'm also just living. And I think a lot of people forget that. And when you're going through the motions in business or building whatever it is, you get into a routine and you feel comfortable with that routine. And then when life basically just comes out of nowhere and pushes you in a different direction, it's very unsettling. Like, think of it, you're surfing and it's all calm and all of a sudden there's this wave and you topple over. I think that's a great way to compare it, and you have no idea what to do. That's okay. Let's get better at just telling people, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I'm figuring it out. You should not view that as a negative thing to yourself. You shouldn't view that as like, I think how my friend does is like, but I was doing so well. Okay, well, you were doing well. You're going to do well. This is no therapy session here, but these are some things my therapist has had to say to me during these trials and tribulations I've gone through in business. Is like, you did well before. You made a lot of money before. This is right now, but the proof is that you're going to do it again. And so remember that when you're going through those phases. Another thing that I noticed is with networking, people often ask me, how do I know if this is the right networking event to go to? I will tell you off the bat, I no longer go on Meetup or Eventbrite and look for networking events. I just don't. I've gone to hundreds over the years, and I will say like 10 out of every 50 networking events is great. I live in a very optimistic mindset that where if I'm going into a networking event, like I always expect I'm going to meet someone, but it's super annoying if you go to an event, right? And it's like, I've walked into events where it's me and like 50 guys. No one is in my industry. I have no one to talk to. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. And so to prevent that, I have found that the best parties or experiences I've been invited to are via people that I know. I'll reach out to people who are in the industry or who I've met and said like, hey, can you keep me in mind if you need a +1 to any upcoming event? These are the kind of events that I'm interested in. The second thing I'll do is I'll go on, if I do, I really don't anymore, but I'm thinking like as a third person, or if I was wanting to go to more of those events, I would go on to like an Eventbrite or a Meetup. I would find events in the area, and then I would look at the organizers. A lot of times companies will post an event as like an intro event on an Eventbrite or a Meetup, but what you really want to get access to is their more VIP events. And so look at the organizer of who the event is and then find the events that they're having. I always like to reach out to them as well prior and ask if there's any opportunity for me to speak at future events. I think really the way to crack the code with networking is to show up prepared instead of going into a room being like, I don't know what's going on. Figure out who's going to the event. Know who you need to meet. I was at an event last week and I was standing in line for coffee, and it was actually quite a nice event with Shopify, and I ended up talking to the founder. There was 2 co-founders speaking on this panel. I honestly had no idea what they looked like. Like, I had seen a photo, but I had so much going on that day. So I had this full conversation with the guy in line, and I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I'm speaking. Like, I'm one of the founders. And I really felt like an idiot. I was aware of the company, and I was like, okay, just to confirm, like, you're the co-founder of this particular company. He was like, yes. But I felt a little bit stupid. Like, should I have done more research? Should I have looked up who was going or exactly who the speaker was? I think that's a great way to go about it. And then I really like to, when I enter that room, I beeline for that person. The way to become confident with networking is to just try. Every single time you go, even if you don't necessarily want to introduce yourself to the person who's speaking or the celebrity or whatever, have a conversation with the barista or someone who's making the food or whatever before. Get yourself in the headspace of like, okay, I can talk to anyone. If someone is at a networking event or any format of an event, they are also there to meet people. So instead of being scared before you walk into an event, remind yourself, everyone else in this room is here to meet someone else. We're probably here to hear from the panel or who's speaking. However, we're in the room to meet someone else. And so I always like to ask someone, how did you find this event? That's kind of my number one networking question that I'll ask. Like at this same particular event, I was standing next to this really glam looking English lady, and I just looked at her and she kind of looked back at me. You get that weird exchange sometimes when you're networking of like a, hey, and who's going to say something first? And I just said, hi, like, how did you find this event? And I think that's a really easy question. It opens the door for them to say, like, this is what I do. What do you do? And then if someone doesn't say anything back to you or the conversation just ends, okay, move on. To get out of that particular situation, a bad conversation networking, just say, I'd love to go and explore who else is in this room. Like, I'll catch you around, or it was great to connect, or can we add each other on LinkedIn? I find that for me, I feel better escaping a bad conversation with someone by connecting with them on LinkedIn. I know that sounds strange, but I like to do that because I find that it makes it like prove that we had a worthy conversation, that I'm not just trying to escape, even if I am. And it's just a confidence boost. Like, connect with me on LinkedIn, and now I feel like, okay, I can go and meet other people in this room. You're not going to be offended. That's what we're here to do. Now, if you want to go about getting yourself hired or pitch yourself to speak at these particular events, really the person you want to find is the events director. At every single event that I go to, if it's a good event, I will ask around the room, like, hey, do you know who organized this or who's the events manager? I beeline for that person. If that is the one person that I meet at an event who was great, then that's fine. I have now allowed myself and set myself up to be hired potentially for future speaking engagements, and I love that. And so I'll go up to them and I'll say, you always want to say a few things at the beginning. You don't want to just be like, hey, can you hire me to speak at this event? You want to be like, I love this event. Did you set it up? And then when they say yes, you say, that's great. Where can I find other events? And then I like to simply just say, do you ever need additional speakers? I'd love to be considered. Can I get an email for you to send my bio to? This is a very seamless way to create a conversation surrounding business and surrounding a relationship with someone in particular. And it's just a super simple way to go about it. And then I get that person's email. And what I do is I never send an email to someone during the talk or during the presentation. I write a draft email quite quick once I have this person give me their email following our short interaction, and then I schedule a send for either 3 hours after the event or I schedule a send for the next morning. And then I do that because if someone's at an event and they're planning something, it's exhausting, there's a lot going on, and I like to just make sure that they remember who I am instead of opening up the email at the event, being like, okay, great, and then forgetting to reply. So that's the best way, I think, to go about getting those kind of speaking engagements. Same thing with if you go on Eventbrite or Meetup and you find particular organizations who are in that realm, and then you reach out to them. Like a great one would be Albright, which is, they have headquarters in the US and the UK. Finding the events manager there on LinkedIn. It's always like first name dot last name at the website link of the company. Introduce yourself, send them your full bio. Something I find people really do wrong with sales is that they just aren't clear. Like, I don't know how many times I can tell you guys, in your email, get to the email fast. Like, I don't need to know anything besides why are you emailing me? If you want me to mentor you, give me 2 sentences about you, how you came across my work, and then say, I'm looking to potentially get a mentor and I would love to know if this is something you would be open to doing. And then from there, I always reply with like, what is your dream mentorship here? What is it exactly that you would be looking for from me? Going so in depth with like your sales emails to make me just fish for a reason you're emailing me is, I think, what distracts and detracts from you as a business owner or someone who's selling. I was at an event the other day and the 2 founders said, we just want to know in the beginning of your email, what do you want? What do you do? Like, there's no need to make me feel amazing in your email. Like, you're emailing me for a reason. Get to it. I'm very direct with how I handle business, and I think that that's just the way that I naturally receive things, is I don't like bullshit. I hate bullshit in business. I just want to know, because there's so much going on and whoever you're reaching out to only has a certain amount of time. And so you just want to get to the point. And you also, I think, want to be really cautious of who that person is. Like, the bigger the person is that you're reaching out to, the more personal you want your email to be. Like, I would never email someone a BCC to someone who's a bunch of different people I want on my podcast. It's always very personalized. It's always very direct and to the point. And it always also gives someone options. A lot of times now in phone calls, because I realize now running this type of business that like I just don't have enough time in the day, I like to kind of say in an email, can I please send you dates and times along for December? I like to ask founders who I meet if I want them on my podcast, can I get your assistant's email to send dates and times over to you? And it's just, the longer you're in business, you'll realize that those are just the kind of things that like bigger people, bigger names, what will get your attention from them. So going now into how to secure and land your own job role based on what that guy had tweeted me. This is a really interesting conversation. I, as I've mentioned many times, have been in business for so long, and I have created many of my own roles. I have truly struggled over the years as an entrepreneur to figure out what my niche is. The fearless and be fearless, it took me 10 years to, I think, really come. That Disney show was what really was the precipice for me to figure out that was what my brand was. That is who I am as a person. That's how people define me. It is impossible to like find your purpose by just trying things out and then thinking like, this is me. Your purpose is sometimes just to evolve. I think that's a really cool way to look at finding why you are meant to be on this planet. It's like you're just sometimes meant to evolve. And everything for me before that Disney show was evolving into that. And then becoming the personal brand, really following the Disney show, and being able to say that the Be Fearless message is really what resonates the most. That took so many years. But over those years, what I've really had to do to make a living is create my own job roles. I've had to find companies who need people like me on their teams to do it in a consulting way. So I'm not like working full time for anyone. I'm still able to pursue all of my own ideas and my own company. However, what I am doing is bringing consistent income in the door while I'm able to do that. So first thing I would do to create your own job role is I would go on ChatGPT and I would type in recently venture capital backed companies in my industry. If you want to work in marketing, if you want to work in sales, if you have a business degree or a communications degree, you're simply going to type in that. Like, what is an example of a recently backed communications or marketing company? Or give me agencies who have invested in those. The reason I like to do this is because recently venture capital backed companies have a lot of cash to spend on experimental things. If you're coming up with your own job role, congratulations, but you're an experiment. You may pitch this to a company and after a month or however long you work with them, they're like, we don't need this. Okay, great. However, it's gonna be a lot easier for you to get your foot in the door with a smaller team, with a company that has money instead of, for example, a very frugal startup. And you're probably going to be able to get right in touch with the CEO. So from there, once you align with those, use Snovio or LinkedIn Lead Leaper, find these people's emails. The CEO is also not always the person you want to reach out to. Like, if you want to work in marketing or sales, you probably want to reach out to the marketing or PR director. Sometimes the way that I'll find those emails is I'll look up, for example, Chief Swag Officer press release. And at the bottom of every single press release is an email. That is the kind of person that I want to reach out to directly. I'm also a really big fan of finding someone's email in a way that's like, I will never email an info@email. You will never see me emailing info@skims.com or info@nordstroms.com. I want to know the alexa.curtis@nordstrom.com. And the reason I say that and why it's so important to ask for someone's direct email and not take no for an answer if they just give you those general emails is because those general emails are flooded with inquiries. And they are, sure, someone is reading the email, but they are fleshing it with their main email. So like my company email, right? support@BeFearlessSummit.com is tied to ac@BeFearlessSummit.com, which is my main email. But what I'm not doing is I'm not actively really going on the support email maybe once a week because my regular inbox is inundated. And it's the same with that. If you go and reach out to alexa.curtis@kmart.com or target.com versus info@, you're gonna get someone's direct email and like direct access to them instead of being flooded with inquiries. So when you're reaching out and getting your own job interview or your own job opportunity, this is what you need to do. I think right now, 2 industry areas that I would focus on to create your own job role would be community building and the world of sports. Starting on the community building. Every single company out there that is scaling well is building community. I'll use Beehive as an example. I interviewed Tyler, one of the founders of Beehive, on this show last year. Great interview. Highly suggest you watch it. What Beehive has done extremely well, that MailChimp has not done, that ConvertKit, which they now just changed to Kit, has not done, is built community. Beehive was able to chime and tune into a population of people interested in tech, interested in building and scaling newsletters, to where they then were able to give them access to each other on a Slack community, along with access directly to the team, right? Like, you on that Slack, I mean, I've had problems with my account or whatever, and I will just Slack the team. I mean, there's thousands of people on this Slack. I can also write in a support ticket, but knowing that I have direct access to someone on the Beehive team who will reply to my inquiry within 12 hours is phenomenal. Now, not every company can have that, but if you can use Beehive as a case study to why every company should, and then you can present that to one of these companies that doesn't have this, that's recently venture backed, you're in the clear. Another thing you can do also is you can obviously use Canva to create a PowerPoint. This is where I would use ChatGPT or Canva, whatever, is come up with your ideas, write them down, have ChatGPT put it into a proposal, and then you make it look all pretty and stuff and put it in Canva, and then that's what you want to send out. I don't want you to send that proposal before you introduce yourself in an email and come up with something really good to say about why the company you've noticed is missing that and if they'd be open to discussing more with you. And then really it comes down to the follow-up. Follow up every 48 hours if you don't hear back. Connect with someone on LinkedIn. If you don't hear back, something you can also do is the person you've been emailing, find who else is in that category on LinkedIn. Add them, connect with them, and then go back and say, hey, I was contacting Melissa, didn't hear back from her. Can you please take a look at the below? I always find that person gets back to me. It's like a kind of secret way to be like, to act like you know someone even though you don't, which is fine. But in business, that's just the kind of stuff you have to do. So if you're emailing someone you've never met, but you're connected with a LinkedIn, whatever, they're not replying, you may just need to go and find Lillian at the company and be like, hey, have been in touch with Melissa, she's not replying, can you jump in here? And then, they think that you know each other and it's fine, whatever, everyone's too busy in business to even think twice about that stuff, and we're on to the next. And then the other role that I would say is sports. Now, I spoke at Harvard a few weeks ago with Angelina Lawton and Binta Brown, and they were incredible. The panel was great. But while I was on the panel, I really realized, sports is a massive industry. There's a ton of money in sports and a ton of really successful people, females in particular in it, who are either leaders, consulting, not coaches, not the actual athletes, but consultants, or they have agencies. You want to get in touch with those people and you want to pitch them these similar roles. So I would even ask ChatGPT again, give me big sports agencies, give me woman-founded consulting agencies in the realm of sports. Sports is so niche. Not everyone understands sports or can even participate in the conversation. So if you go ahead and you find people who do, love the idea of you pitching yourselves to them for either a mentorship or even a job. I think Angelina was a great example. She has a massive company called Sports Digita. She's super smart. I know that she would love to hire people who reach out to her, or if you come up with a cool idea, send it to her. You have to think of it like this, right? If you're a mega millionaire or you're someone very successful, $3,000 to $5,000 is nothing for you, right? So what you want to do is you want to align yourself with those kind of people, and you want to give them good results within the first 4 to 6 weeks. And then from there, what you want to do is you want to stay in touch with them. You want to give them something else. You want to say, I'd love to stay on. Can we maintain it? Now, the one thing to not do is to just let someone ghost you, let someone not reply to you. If someone is not engaging with you after having reached out to you a few times, all you need to do is send them a message like, hey, would be great to hear back from you, at least can close the loop so I stop following up. Please let me know if you've received the below. A lot of times my emails go to spam and it's super frustrating, and it's actually on the follow-up that I realize that, because they reply so sorry, didn't see this, your email went to spam. And so the thing you want to do is you don't want to just think you're being ghosted and lean into that. Do you really think anyone who is successful has been ghosted and just leaned into it? No, you can't, because otherwise 9 times out of 10 people aren't going to reply to you. They're too busy, and you need to remind them that you exist. The best way to do that is through the follow-up. Get on the phone, ask them if they received your email, and then proceed on through there. I feel like that was so much conversation about business. That was extremely informative. Even as I was saying things out loud, I was like, oh, I forgot to do that. Or I'm thinking of people I forgot to follow up with. Great way to overcome also forgetting to follow up with someone is I set follow-up emails with them. I've gotten so fine-tuned on that follow-up. If I email someone and a week later don't hear, I'll have a scheduled email for them a week later, and then I've forgotten. It's in my outbox folder. I don't feel like that crazy person that's hey, I'm following up. I've scheduled them and then I've forgotten. And I'm telling you, someone will reply to you if you just stay persistent. So that is this week's episode of Dare to be Fearless. Thank you so much for tuning in. As I mentioned, if you are interested in getting swag from Chief Swag, please head to the show notes to find out more about what we're doing. If you have any other particular business questions, send me a message on Instagram, on social media, at Alexa_Curtis or at Dare to be Fearless. And I'll see you next week for a new episode of the show.